is that we will honor them the way they need to be honored. And the work that went into that was really something. So it was good for me too to have everybody gathered there last night.
Am I good? Okay, so yeah, I mean, I saw Claire and asked her a few times how she was doing, and Teddy the same thing, and I could tell that as long as they were focused on work, it was.
Oh yeah, I'm being very Minnesotan about it, where I'm just pushing it off. And I said, but it comes at the times you don't expect it. And last night, I think there was a lot of people. It was very, we had the union guys there who opened up the union halls, and our team got very close to Colin and Sophie. In fact, again, off the record, we all bought tickets and we're going with them to Colin Hay is playing again at the Orpheum. We're all huge Colin Hay fans.
Nice.
And he is fantastic. So on that day, we were all listening to Waiting for My Real Life to Begin, on the funeral day and everything. So, and we told them that we were doing that, and they said, we want to go with you guys. So we're going to go with the kids to Colin Hay this fall. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we're good to go now, and I won't start with on June 14th, but I will, because you were talking about the services.
Yeah.
I'm watching the services, I'm watching you deliver a eulogy. It looked to me like you were just trying to race through it. I know how you are with speeches sometimes, and I watched this and I was like, he is barely holding it together.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
That's an accurate assessment. I told my team, just for comparisons or whatever, it was so much harder than the Chicago speech, so much harder than Philadelphia. These were 30 million TV viewers and everything on the line, and just a different feel. This one was both so personally devastating and understanding the gravity of the moment and trying, quite honestly, everyone's wishes in this to try and navigate not overtly political, but understanding all life is overtly political and trying to make that message. But yeah, I think that's the hardest delivery I've ever had, the longest 5 minutes.
So now I'll go back to June 14th. Timeline, obviously the Hortmans is the first scene. How soon after that do you get notified that something's going on?
Yeah, I think the first call came to me, and they have it on there somewhere around 4:30, 4:35, and that first call was that Senator Hortman and his wife had been shot. We're not quite sure, but and this was Chris Smitter, and then mentioned that they're concerned with others and they're checking on other ones, and there may be activity at the Hortman house. He called back about 5 minutes later, obviously emotional and distraught, and said that Mark and Melissa had been killed. And that was about 4:40. We gathered together, started the calls. By that point in time, the call had been made, almost an hour earlier to get out to all the folks involved, all the local agencies, start all that. I ended up just a little bit before 6 o'clock at the Emergency Operations Center, and then I think we stayed there until probably midnight that night.
Yeah, I mean, you were definitely emotional that day as well, but I'm wondering if, put in that situation, knowing that there's a senator who's been targeted, and Melissa's been targeted, maybe you already knew that there was a list. Are you worried? Your house is a little more defended, I think.
Yeah, no, look, the Constitution and the laws in Minnesota provide for security for the governor, but the only one. What I was concerned about, and I immediately called Senator Klobuchar and started the federal folks as it was coming out, the ones I could think of, because all of us were kind of reaching out as quickly as possible just to let them know. And I thought about this from the federal delegation. They have nothing. As a member of Congress, I drove myself to events. You don't have any security. You coordinate with, Capitol Police or Sergeant at Arms and local folks or whatever. But as far as me personally, no, I know. But my thoughts did go to, my daughters outside the home, things like that. And this, again, it was very preliminary. I wasn't hearing what's in it, other than that there was a large list of targets and they extended to multiple states. So at that point in time, we had to assume that there were multiple people doing this. There wasn't just the assumption it was the same guy at both places, that there were multiple people doing it. So.
Let me talk about your relationship with Melissa Hortman. I mean, I have seen over 3 years that obviously you've worked closely with her. There's a lot there, but beyond my knowledge, even you guys have worked closely for a long time. Just talking about what you guys have kind of gotten through together.
Yeah, well, we were kindred spirits, I think, ideologically. We thought things. I think Melissa got into public service to try and do right by people. She gave up a career that she could have made more money in. And if you're the speaker, it's not part-time, it's full-time. And she was, as I've said, not just the most consequential speaker, I think by the accomplishments, she was the most skillful legislator. There has been less than a handful I worked with in Congress, people who are really, really good. Now, there's some that are really good at policy. There's some that are really good at communications. There's some that are really good at the politics of electoral politics. There are singular individuals, and she was, for me, the one that I saw the most, and she was the best at all of those things. And the ability to be able to have respect on both sides of the aisle. This was a singularly talented legislator, but she married it with just being a decent person. And I said, I appreciate you mentioning that. June 14th was the first time I was in the presence of Melissa Hortman that I was not happy and laughing. She brought joy to every room she came in. At the hardest times on negotiations, she was there. And very few people in my life did I have someone look me in the eye and say, I've got your back. Do what you need to do, I've got your back. She said that during COVID, and knowing that, politically, this might not be good, but it was the right decision to protect people, and she was willing to put her own career on the line to do that. So I just candidly, this building feels very different to me, and I'm trying to understand what that means, what that looks like going forward, but her impact on literally millions of Minnesotans. And I think as time goes by, the story, and it needs to be told. It doesn't need to be a legend because it's so factually truthful. She may end up being the most consequential elected official that served Minnesota, and I really believe that. And so for me, not having a friend there, but I feel a little bit unmoored of not having the most trusted political ally there.
Was she just a work friend for you, or was she also outside of work?
Yeah, she was outside too, and I don't, I'm not a very social person of like doing things outside. I kind of keep to myself, and the nature of the job is not to add a lot to that. But we talked about everything, and that shared love for dogs was important, and I don't make light of it. I say what you will, I think animals have an innate sense of where people are at, and I think people who show that compassion, it was another side of her. So we talked about a lot of that. She was always engaged, asking what my children were doing, watching that, and thoughtful. I think now, because I don't have a lot of those close friends do things, I wish I would have done more. I wish we would have gone out and eat. We did. We had them to our house. We did those things, but I wish it would have been. I would like to have been Melissa Hortman's friend when neither one of us are in elected office, and you could just be friends. Without that, I think that's the piece that I regret.
How much will you mentioned one thing that was off the record, but I won't get into that, but just how much will you be like helping Colin and Sophie for?
Well, our team is there. These are phenomenal kids, and what they got taken from them. I'm really proud of how the state responded together and put together what I think was a fitting tribute to Mark and Melissa. And I think trying to stay engaged. I think all of us who've had, especially when you're younger like that, the hard part about grief is there's the outpouring of love and support, and they saw it, and they know it's real. But grief is also very personal, and now it's very lonely. I can lament, and I have feelings about this, but it was, a couple-day news cycle, and everybody else moved on. Well, they're not moving on. And I tell people, I think people who've been through grief, and all of us eventually, if we live long enough, get there. It doesn't necessarily get better, it just gets different. And I think being engaged with this family, and should they wish it, it feels like a real gift to me to stay engaged with that family, because this loss is immeasurable. Professional loss for me is immeasurable. And there's talented people, don't get me wrong, and the caucus will come together. But I think just as our paths crossed at a certain time coming through COVID, George Floyd, this legislative session, which you heard me say might have been our proudest moment, not having that there. So I think staying connected to the family matters.
I'll get you to address a couple of things that are a little uglier. The guy whose name I don't say,
Yeah.
but obviously he's trying to pin some of this on you. Can you just...
Well, justice system will handle it. I'm grateful for law enforcement of what they've done. The justice system, and justice will be served as far as confessing to it and everything else. I'm not going to engage in all that. I think that's just, I have to tell you, reading some of the things in the last few days was very hard. I don't want to see him in there either. And all I see on Melissa Hortman is some of her last words. I am not remembering her that way, and I refuse to allow the state to remember her. This guy will go through the process, and should he be found guilty, he will be forgotten by this state, as he should be.
And you didn't know it, right? I mean, I know
No.
you put him on the board that he was already on, but you
No, I
didn't
do
know.
thousands of those, and no indication. No, never, to the best of my ability, was anywhere around. Certainly don't know him or talk to him.
Some folks on the right say that your rhetoric somehow contributed to this. And I know, like, maybe a little before this you had addressed Trump, and I can see that this is a kind of a trend in Democratic politics, is to, say Trump's a bully, we need to bully him back. You said something about...
He is a bully. He is a bully, and he violates the Constitution. I was very specific towards him. Here's what I think we have a problem with in this country. There's a very strict and a dividing line between heated rhetoric about policy and calling people out for their terrible policies and contributing to conspiracy theories. On the 4th of July, the president said he hated all Democrats. The false equivalency of me saying Donald Trump's a bully and what he's doing on immigration is immoral, that's a very different thing. So the both sidesism in this is incredibly dangerous. Do we have to watch some of that? Yeah. And I said, Donald Trump brings out the worst in people, and he brings out the worst in me, because I have certainly never been accused of that with anybody else. I've never had those interactions, but I watch what he does. You see the interactions of people who I considered to be my friends. Politically, we don't agree, but members of the congressional delegation, Republican congressional delegation from Minnesota, the way they speak to me and the things they say to me, I'll own what I own, but I am not going to buy into this false equivalency. And when this state is grieving and this nation saw what happened here, Donald Trump used it as an opportunity to attack me. I'm not going to go there. I'll watch what I use. But I will not normalize Donald Trump. I will not back off on calling what it is. I think we are at a disadvantage, we being Democrats. We respect the institutions, we respect the norms, we respect the free media. He respects none of that. So we're still trying to figure out how to do this. But I want people to be very clear. When you hear me use my rhetoric, it's directed at him. He said every person who's not with him, he hates. Having the President of the United States hate over half the population, he needs to remember, not near half the population voted for him. That's dangerous. That is dangerous.
And he never managed to reach out over...
Never.
Hortman assassination either.
Never. I don't believe he reached out to the family. He doesn't have to reach out to me. I'm symbolic of the state. It's the office. This isn't about me. He could have, knowing that we were personal friends and knew that, but he's devoid of that. He's devoid of human compassion. He does not care. You see it time and time again.
That leads me to the big bill, big budget bill. And there are some significant cuts in there to Medicaid and SNAP that'll hit Minnesota, but it looks like those are being delayed.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, we were thinking maybe special session was coming, but does it look like there's something there?
Well, we don't know yet. It's a good point. And again, if he was proud of this, he would have tried to implement them, but he's not. He knows this is super unpopular. You see all the polling on this, and when people learn more about it and they just throw this stuff in the middle of the night, they make it difficult. He can switch positions on from Epstein to I won't cut Social Security. We know that he's doing this. I think the real question is, unlike Donald Trump, who doesn't plan for anything and has no sense of responsibility, large agencies, government, and businesses plan over the horizon. And so I think the real question here is, we know these cuts are coming. If you're planning some type of expansion or hiring, especially in the healthcare space, you're not going to do that. So you're going to start to see that contraction. And we're just starting to understand the implications of this. I mentioned yesterday just the realignment of who's eligible on Medicaid for the state of Minnesota and for our counties is going to cost us in excess of $160 million. So if you're worried about the national debt, which this explodes and does nothing about, the cost of this bill just to implement the cuts is going to be that expensive, and then we have about $1 billion on top. So I think it's too early to tell. I remind Minnesotans that we are in strong financial shape. Not only did we reduce the long over-the-horizon structural imbalance, we ended the year about $1 billion up. So in addition to having surpluses the next two bienniums, we also have reduced that overall shortfall by about 85%. With that being said, we can't absorb all of this to make the difference. And again, I think it's, when you talk numbers like this and you're talking timelines, the real disruption is to people who know they're going to lose access to care, they're going to lose access to the nursing home that they're in, they're going to lose access to the food. And I think those are things that will probably come before the actual implementations, and that's what we'll have to decide.
I've already seen some businesses, hospitals especially, start to close.
They have to, like you're seeing close emergency rooms. And what they'll do is when natural attrition of someone retires out, they won't fill those positions.
So that, at least in 26, will be an issue when the legislature's meeting. Are you planning in 26, you gotta get through all that, are you planning to run for governor that year?
I have not made that decision yet. Listening to what Minnesotans have to say, I guess my touchstone point on that is if I feel like I have service and I can add to the quality of Minnesota. We talk about providing security to Minnesotans economically, public safety wise, investments over the future. It's my intention to have a decision relatively soon, but I will just be candid. Melissa's murder, I think, is another thing to think about in terms of what does it mean to be here. And then I would also take into consideration, can I be the best messenger in this moment? And I think it's going to be important not just to be a firewall against Donald Trump, but to provide that positive vision that we've been trying to provide. And I think what's so, there's so many tragic things about June 14th, but we were coming out within 2 weeks of what I still consider to be one of the most bipartisan achievements in a very terrible, divisive political environment. Democrats and Republicans here did it respectfully, and I hold great affinity to a lot of the leadership, Republican and Democrats, who were in the room with Melissa as we were working through this. It was good stuff.
Does it make does it make that choice, or does it make the actual campaigning easier or harder now that you have kind of this national spotlight on you as well?
I think it's double-edged sword on that, because I was honored to be picked. I didn't lobby for that job. I think I added something, and I think it's because of what Minnesota did, but I do think you're always up against this idea that you now have a national profile. Anything I say, and I'm concerned about this, we see it every day, I'm concerned that this administration targets folks who they see as political rivals, and I feel like we're getting stuff coming down on Minnesota that is totally unnecessary for that, and so I have to take that into consideration. It makes it easier to raise money, obviously. I know more people. I mean, that's just a reality of political life. But I also think, there's a tendency, and I think Minnesotans, and I'm one of them on this, is that you always got to be careful to not get too big for your britches. And my focus has always been Minnesota. It always was. I was asked to be on that national ticket and elevated that up. Doesn't change where my focus is, but it may change people's perception. So it's a really good question. I think it cuts both ways.
I'll let you, I know you won't say anything about running for president either, so I know Claire wants to clear you out for the next thing. So let me ask you this. Have you ever run across the Washington Avenue Bridge? I have never run across that. I've run by it many times down there along the river, but I haven't run across it. But, this is another case. This one is both sad and uplifting at the same time. And this is one that I will forever be in awe, especially of parents who lose a child tragically, whether it's to distracted driving, whether it's to substance abuse, or whether it's to suicide, that they turn what I can only imagine is just unimaginable grief into something positive. And so we're going to be joined by a group of folks who want to make sure that we do more to make sure that bridge, is safe, and that before a bad decision or a pained decision is made, that
were able to be there. So, but I've never personally crossed that one on a run.
All right, I can call it there.
Thanks.
I will say,
So you're headed to Denmark?